Petroleum Products Retail Outlets Owners Association of Nigeria, PETROAN, has urged NNPCL to make its proposed technical equity partnership for the Port Harcourt and Warri refineries legally binding. It wants clear completion deadlines, guaranteed throughput, minimum availability levels, and financial penalties for non-performance. PETROAN also called for full disclosure of the commercial terms of the deal with the two Chinese companies.
The association's national president, Banditry, said the move aligns with President Bola Tinubu's position that refinery performance should be measured by profitability and output rather than commissioning ceremonies. NNPCL signed the MOU with the Chinese firms in April for the completion, operation, and maintenance of the two refineries. We're now joined by the president, Petroleum Products Retail Outlets Association of Nigeria, Billy Gilly Harris. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
And good morning, Nigeria. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you. We're also joined by Professor Emeritus of Petroleum Economics, Professor Wumi Ilidari. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, Prof.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
All right. Now let's get into the questions for today. $4.15 billion was spent on refinery interventions between 1993 and 2019. And then there was another $3.14 billion approved in 2021. The worry now is, do we have another big refinery commissioning ceremony coming up with lots of smoke and activity? We saw that happen in previous times. All the activities we're celebrating, we saw that with Port Harcourt. But now we're seeing that there's still no profitable refinery at the end of it. What do we need to do? Or first of all, how do we hold to account the people who promised working refineries, who ensured that we had journalists there to tell the story of refineries being commissioned until today? We're not seeing profitability of these refineries. I'll start with Mr. Billy Gilly Harris.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us. Of course, you know that PETROAN was in the forefront of organizations that did the best we can to encourage the government, encourage NNPC, and assure Nigerians it's true. Incidentally, that is not that's not what we saw eventually. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Doctor. Please go ahead.
Okay. So basically, those ceremonies that were held and then coming up with the bio-auxiliary government leadership and stopping the whole process of the refinery rolling out products was very worrisome for us. But however, we are not in NNPC. They are the people in NNPC, even though they owe us accountability, because we are Nigerians and those assets belong to us as Nigerians. So we need to be certain, of what is being done. It's enough of the shrouded, secrecy of how NNPC operates. We certainly cannot continue in that way, and that is one of the things that PETROAN has called for. We salute the president for most of the actions he has taken in the oil and gas area, from removal of subsidy to even signing the executive order to make sure that NNPC do not spend money anyhow that they want to. And then now that these Chinese companies are coming, we believe that it's going to do us a lot of good with the $50 billion bill that is coming up to unlock some of the assets in the deep offshore. We should be able to get a lot of crude oil for local refining. Hopefully, that 4 million barrels per day, threshold that we are canvassing for may be achieved. So I think the only way we can do this is to hold the actors accountable. You guys in the Fourth Estate, you have a lot of work to do. You need to do quite a very deep investigative journalism to get the facts and put them out in the public for us to know. That's one of the ways to stop any kind of corruption that is being, permeated in these areas.
Now, I want to follow up with you on this, Dr. Gilly Harris, talking about investigative journalists and following up. I mean, we are journalists, and when the government tells us that a refinery is working and you go to the location of the refinery and you see smoke bellowing out of the chimney, so to speak, what does that say? Does it mean it's working, or we have to go inside and see things with our eyes and, get the chemist to do a product test in order to confirm? Because there seems to be, these days, you need to go further than what your eyes see.
Well, I do not think that you will do much more than your call to duty or your call of duty. The fact that if the chimneys, as you call them, are already firing up billows of flames, and that seems to be working, it's a good thing to do. But other than that, you have already rightly complained that billions of dollars have been loaned. Those monies were not just got, it's not even from our earning. We loaned most of those monies from Afri-Exim and from some other lending institutions. And those monies are going to be paid by Nigerians, regardless of who is in government. So Nigerians ordinarily should be able to know quite a lot more than that. And yes, you don't.
Okay, I think we lost connection with Dr. Billy Julius Harris there. But let me come to Professor Iledare. It's great that we have an emeritus professor of petroleum economics this morning. So this question fits just into your expertise. Let's interrogate the economics rather than the politics. The Port Harcourt and Warri refineries have combined nameplate capacity of hundreds of thousands of barrels a day. Does it actually make economic sense to continue pouring money into these aging refineries, or would Nigeria be better served by investing in new, modern refining capacity? At what point does rehabilitation become throwing money or emptying water into a basket?
Thank you again, and good morning. That's a legitimate question that you are asking. But I want us to separate political announcement from economic decision-making. And I want us to think not about the sunk costs that have been spent, because it is spent already. The question to be asked is simple. Is spending additional dollar going to generate more than $1 that is going to be spent to get that additional dollar? And I want us to take sentiment out of this, and I also want us to be as much apolitical as possible, even though this is very difficult in the Nigerian setting. Certainly, asking about billions that you have spent is worth asking, but that does not necessarily translate to what value, either energy security value or monetary value, that is important. But the most important thing is this, and I keep saying it, everything is about value creation. And the role of government is not to spend that money anymore because they don't have it. The role of the government in this debate is simply to facilitate an environment that will allow investors to be able to make money out of every dollar that is spent. The sunk cost is already gone. The question that must be asked and answered is, if spending additional dollar will create more than $1, is the value addition going to be worth pursuing? That is the answer the investor will have to answer after doing their evaluation of the operationality of the refinery that we have at the moment.
All right, Prof. I mean, let me still stay with Prof before we go to Dr. Gilesari. Just earlier on, my colleague had mentioned that what would it look like, especially coming from where the current president had equally celebrated, eulogized the former past president on ensuring that the refinery was kick-started. And now here we are back to level zero, nothing was done. It's usually said that before you move on or before you start, you need to know where you're coming from. And from where we're coming from, it seems we haven't closed the doors yet on what had happened to the monies that were spent in kickstarting the refineries. Or do you suggest that we just move on without having a closure? Because before we pump in more money to to restart all over again? I mean, we have an agreement with the Chinese firms, which you're going to come back to, Dr. Gilles Harris, to speak on that. But do you think we need to really, really bring to book those who were involved in perpetrating that lie and in, deceiving over 200 million Nigerians that the refineries were working, whereas they weren't?
Well, I think what we're talking today is whether to restart the refinery or not restart it. But in terms of those anybody that has committed any crime or any deception, that's left for the court of law to judge, not the public to prosecute. I come from a petroleum economic perspective as to what decision ought to be made. It's unfortunate that quite often we don't separate political announcement from reality. What do you expect the president to do that is seeking to be re-elected than to celebrate the past president, or either he dissociates himself from him or celebrate him? And the question, if he celebrates the past president, does that facilitate his election? This is not about the refinery or not, it's about an election process, but I don't want to go there. Let's just look at it. It doesn't matter whether they prosecute those that have misapplied the money or they don't prosecute it. The issue is, does reactivating this refinery going forward add value? And that's the question that must be answered and explained to the public. And then look at the imperative of it within the emerging energy landscape. To me, I think whether they prosecute people or they don't prosecute people will not lead to whether value will be created with additional investment. What it can lead to is to ensure whoever is spending public money is accountable and transparent in spending it. I think that's the only important aspect of letting those who did wrong pay for it. And let me quickly add, and I'm hoping, we're not talking about public money when it comes to reactivating the NNPC refinery. We're talking about investors who see value in this asset. I want to find out that, am I going to have a higher earning power if I get involved in this investment than if I decide to go and build a new refinery at scratch? And I think that's the debate and not necessarily a political one. It's an investment decision which the investors have to make. And if government is part of the investors, then government will ask itself, is value going to be created irrespective of the million that I've already spent? I can give you companies that spend billions to look for natural gas in Nigeria, and they left it and move ahead because value cannot be added for additional spending. Let us not dwell on the sunk costs. Let us see whether there's any justification for additional dollar to reactivate this investment, even from a strategic point of view.
Okay.
Economics must be added.
Okay.
First.
Thank you so much. Let me switch to Dr. Gilles Harris there. Can you share with us what your thoughts are? And also, we do hear it's a joint venture with a Chinese company. We don't know the percentage. Some are saying it's 51% and so on. What do you make out of that? And with my previous question as well, if you have a say to that.
Try to avoid doing. The Nigerian public deserves to know the reality. Whatever is the terms of the transaction, Nigerians should know. What Nigerians want to see is that their assets, the assets that belong to Nigerians, are now being reactivated and they are all working to the benefit of Nigerians. Obviously, the economic benefits are immense. Once we have local refineries working to ensure that we have additional source of refined petroleum product supply, it is in the best interest of Nigerians. It will do a lot to make sure that there's more than enough availability of petroleum product, and the affordability of these refined products would also then now be what to be the focus to discuss. So my thought is that the refineries are workable. They are young in age. When you go to the Caribbean and somewhere in Southern America, even in America itself, you see refineries that are over 100 years old. So they are still working. So there's nothing wrong with us making our refineries that we set up in the 70s to work. So that will just make it about 50-something years or thereabout. So they're still very young, and investment, them is what embarking on. As far as we are the ones who have taken the product from the refinery, so we know what will be much more economical and beneficial for the Nigerian people, especially through our services. So that's why we are very interested in encouraging NNPC to do what they can to ensure that these Chinese companies or Russian companies or even Nigerian companies that want to partner effectively, make the agreements binding, effective, set of rules, measuring the sticks to be able to measure how the progression is coming, and let the Nigerian public know exactly what is being done.
All right, let's talk about, still following up with you, Dr. Billy Julie Harris, the timeline that PETROAN will consider reasonable for Nigerians to see some measurable results from this proposed technical equity partnership.
Well, for us, what we have seen so far in that refinery, from what the other company that work with the Port Harcourt refinery and the Warri refinery have done, especially the Port Harcourt refinery, I think they've gone very far enough. And the idea to make it function well and be commercially productive, I think that's the question. So that should not take a long time, a maximum of 9 months. At least about 6 to 12 months should be able to do for Nigerians to begin to see, petroleum products really refined and come out of it. So, but if we are asked, if we should ask in real times, we'd like to sit down with NNPC, with the Chinese companies, and representatives of the consuming public to be able to give an idea of what we want to expect. Because like I always said, the NNPC refineries are national assets and they belong to every Nigerian, living or dead.